SpeekyGeeky's TMNT Character Spotlight. Hi, everybody. Welcome to SpeekyGeeky. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Geeky. Today, we are going to be discussing and giving a big ol' spotlight to NECA Archie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures toy line. Over the years, we've tried to bring you episode after episode of all different lengths and realms of Turtles. Sometimes, those episodes were Mirage, sometimes Fred Wolf, sometimes 2012, but historically, and you know we love diving deep into all the history here, those would focus on around 6 or so rad characters within each offering. Over the years, however, we've had a myriad of folks take time out of their busy days to ask us if we might be able to keep all the deep diving fun, but break it down a bit, because there's a big difference between finding 15 minutes at a time to learn about one exciting character versus over an hour to hear about 6 or more. We understand incredibly well that an hour or more is sometimes a long commitment then doable in this breakneck speed world we occupy. So we figured, heck, we think there's a way to meet folks where they're at. However they'd like to view our deep dives, by creating both a long-form episode and a series of shorter, broken-down character-specific episodes. So that way, we're putting the turtle power of choice in the viewer's hands on how they would like to interact on all our dorky character content goodness. Plus, this way, if you like a specific character and want others to know how freaking bodacious they are, boom! You can share a quick story with them versus throwing a full-on shelf of encyclopedia books their way. That said, we'd love for fans to weigh in on who you would like to see covered in our TMNT deep dives too. So be sure to let us know in the chat and in the comments below, because who knows? Some of your choices may end up making an appearance or two in one of our upcoming episodes as well. So welcome to our new-ish Spotlight series, where every episode we choose a different character from the various worlds of Turtles, and eventually other shows as well, to deconstruct their origins for your viewing entertainment. A reminder here too that each of these episodes can be found in their fuller form within other episodes within our channel as well, which we'll always be sure to conveniently drop links for within the video and the description. So if that is your preferred way of hearing more, by golly, we got you covered there too. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy hearing more about a specific character within the world of Turtles than you could ever want to know. The Uncanny Trio. Nope. Contrary to what internet foodies might say, we are not talking about eggplant, summer squash, and melon. We're talking about the dastardly mutants Nocturno, Nevermore, and HALLOCAT. Or is that HALOCAT? I could never get the answer on that. Yes, we are also fully aware that one of the characters' names sounds like he would be something you'd confide to a loved one that you accidentally had overnight during one of those really fun dreams. So now that our 5th grade selves have managed to move past all of our Nocturno omission jokes, let's dive into who the actual shell these rad characters are and what makes them so well suited for getting the toy treatment. Though a good deal of the younger generation of Turtles fans may be asking right now, why are you focusing on the cheering background characters in Shredder's Revenge, Geeky? Gather around, little geeklings, because you'll be excited to know that in fact this trio has been popping up within the world of Turtles in various forms for decades now. The Uncanny Trio was the name bestowed upon a group of mutants that happened to be mutated together and found a kindred friendship post-mutation. Well, friendship and their uncanny ability to control humans to do their bidding, a la Stepford Wives or Children of the Corn style. Okay, so before we dive into this gift they possess, well, we assume it's a joint effort thing. It's never really made entirely clear if it's all 3 of them or just one, and the other 2 just kind of go along with it. It's important to dig a little more into their origins and the scope of the tale they were introduced. It all begins in Innsmouth, Massachusetts. If you are thinking to yourself that this very specifically named town rings a bit of a familiar bell, it may be because this was the name of the fictional town that was popularized within H.P. Lovecraft novella The Shadow over Innsmouth, which focused on a mostly deserted fishing town full of dilapidated buildings and people who walked with a distinctive, shambling gait and who had odd, narrow heads with flat noses and bulgy, starry eyes, which is significant because what we just described from that story, in a nutshell, was the impetus for this homage of a story. So a well-earned high 3 and a heartfelt cowabunga to any folks in the audience who correctly just guessed that this trio of mutants were actually a back channel for a wink and nod crossover with H.P. Lovecraft. Show of hands? Show of hands? Oh, nobody guessed that one? That's what we thought. So basically, in this origin story called In the Dark, which also could be referring to those earlier mentioned Nocturno emissions. Dang it, Geeky, we thought you said you got all those out. And now you just made us say a gross thing too? It's so not cool. But let's continue. There's a super illegally operating company who is burning toxic waste, and whoops, an owl and a crow accidentally fly too close to the fumes pouring out of the chimney and find their way as ingredients of this mysterious brew. And then, for good measure, the cat of the dumping site foreman, with the premutated name of Pookie, for any folks out there needing an answer to a super obscure question for your next TMNT trivia night, is also thrown into the toxic waste. And even though they all went in at the same time, and we are all now fully aware of a character who was the explicit byproduct of that in the form of a Nardo earlier in this very episode, the three animals come out at the end of the process as three fully grown individual mutants. Nocturno the owl, Nevermore the crow, get it? Like Edgar Allan Poe, quote the Raven, Nevermore, and HALLOCAT. The cat, that one is literally right there in the name. Where were we again? Oh yeah. So a couple of shady workers for this company, while doing their best thinly veiled impression of the characters from Of Mice and Men, but here named George and Benny versus George and Lenny, so you know, legally distinctively different, get this mutation revenge tour rolling. The reasons of the trio's revenge is implied to be in a similar style to Vid Vicious, where it was because of the company's illegal environmental actions that led to their very creation, and thus the reason for their revenge. But the flip side of that is also that without this environmental meddling, they wouldn't have these mutant powers in which they would be able to seek their revenge, which is quite the conundrum, and clearly points to some room for perspective here, it seems. To be transparent here, though, the only reason we're taking the devil's advocate approach here is that we happen to love mutants so much that entertaining the notion of fighting the powers that create them to us just means there would be fewer mutants and less fun stories surrounding them. So take this part of the rant with a grain of salt. Sure, these sound like pretty rad characters, mainly because, you know, they are, but it's not only that they have aesthetics that immediately check many of our mutant boxes for our toy shelf all in one swoop. They also happen to be way more involved in the TMNT lore than folks might realize. Starting with the smallest member, who also happens to be the de facto leader of the bunch, HALLOCAT. If when you first saw this character you couldn't help but do a double take that his appearance looked an awful lot like a certain other felonious feline from the Playmates line, give yourself a big pat on the back and a pinch of catnip because your initial instincts were 100% spot on. That's right. Our favorite and possibly difficult to find in the toy aisle, crafty crook cat Scratch, was indeed directly inspired from HALLOCAT. Scratch and HALLOCAT, again, I don't know if it's HALLOCAT or HALLOCAT, just we're going to roll with it, were designed by Ryan Brown, with the latter cat actually existing not just in toy form, but also video game form, in TMNT 3 Radical Rescue to be exact, and then many years later as his original form as a background character in Shredder's Revenge, with the earlier version coming out at roughly the same time as his Playmates figure release. In fact, when Ryan originally pitched Scratch as a figure, it was with Scratch, then called the Cat Burglar, as a little buddy to Nocturno, then called a significantly less punchy name of simply Burglar, Jewel Thief, Owl Mutant. Though, to be fair, in the description, he almost uses the name within the phrase, "They strike at night by the light of nocturne owl eyes." Sadly, this early version of Scratch that would have also included Nocturno, the, we guess, Nocturne Owl, was ultimately rejected by then TMNT brand manager for Playmates, Carl Aronian. So, you know, over 40 years ago style womp womp, which back in those days, they just didn't have the present day knowledge to understand it was. And let me get back in the 90s lingo mindset for a moment. All that in a bag of chips. Da bomb. Or even off the hook. Don't folks miss the 90s? Also, does anyone else have a sudden nostalgic urge to call the OK Cola 1-800-I-FEEL-OK hotline? No? That's just us and entirely gives off how isolated we were from other humans our age as a child? Cool, 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 cool.
A teddy bear might think, I sure like being furry. A stuffed dog might think, bow wow, bow wow. A pretend stuffed person might think, hey, I don't have to go to school. I never have to get a job. But I am rather small, and I have no elbows or knees. Oh well, I'm sure things are going to be okay.
So, as is to be anticipated, or feared with our deep dives, we've clearly now gone completely off the rails. So, back to our favorite part of the 90s that is also one of our favorite parts of art today, the Turtles. While many characters within the world of Turtles started as one thing and eventually mutated into another, HALLOCAT, as a feline pinstriped criminal, seemed a very minimal leap toward the eventual incarnation of Scratch as a feline pinstriped criminal, but now slightly taller and with different color fur action. Brown did attempt to bring Scratch himself into the Archie comic that would have coordinated to come out alongside the toy release, but that story would have seen him acting solo and would have presented him as a wholly different character than HALLOCAT. Within that story, which would have been called You Scratch My Mutant, I'll Scratch Yours, the character Scratch would have been introduced, creating a fleet of mutants underground using his mutant manufacturing machine within the city's ancient catacombs, along with his army of mutant rats. He devised a plan to become the undisputed king of New York City, with the only thing standing in his way being the Ninja Turtles. That story would have ended with Scratch being defeated right after creating his very last rat mutant named Silverfist, which we like to believe was a precursor to the eventual evil Splinter character from the Tales of TMNT and the 2003 series Sliver, and his rat army ending up in the welcoming hands of none other than the Rat King. SpeekyGeeky says, it's worth noting here that at the time of producing this episode, we did reach out to Ryan Brown for clarity on this and a wealth of other lingering questions from TMNT's past. We are told those answers are coming, but we're not yet available for this episode. So stay tuned, folks. While there has been some chatter that Scratch was also eventually the inspiration for the IDW character Old Hob, as we mentioned in our 2012 TMNT deep dive, which for convenience you can find right here, there are seemingly much more directly recognizable inspirations in the form of TMNT and Other Strangenesses, Cat's Blood Claw, and Caesar, with their proclivity for big guns, eye patches, and corresponding gaggles of henchweasels, versus Scratch, who, and this is true, happens to also be a feline mutant who also has a name that is a pseudonym for the devil. And end of list. To be clear, our intent is not to quibble about his true origins. However folks feel close to the awesomeness of this character, we feel the same, so it doesn't really matter the journey we took to get here. We're on the same party wagon to cat-scratching Awesome Town, and we're primarily just taking the absolutely necessary opportunity to lay all this out and make crystal clear for folks that if Scratch just so happened to be on your top list for one of your most sought-after classic figures, well, here's the inspiration that led to the eventual creation of that character, which, on a scale of meaningful TMNT in-world street cred, we tend to think ranks pretty high up there. But geeky, this is a long way to go for the rest of the trio that were only just in that one issue, right? Well, technically it's true from an Archie Comics proper perspective, but also technically they were in a handful more. And no, we aren't counting the source book here just to make that math work. Stay with us. We give it the technicality award here because Nocturno did make another central character story appearance in the same month and year that he made his appearance in the Archie series. Here, it was in the 1991 TMNT magazine with a rad tale called Beat or Be Eaten, where the Turtles are seemingly meeting him again, but for the very first time. Well, they have to fend him off from eating Splinter, then inevitably befriend the mutant owl that, yes, also goes by the name Nocturno here. So technically, Nocturno becomes an ally to the Turtles in the expanded canon. Then, in 1993, the full trio themselves almost made a second appearance in another issue of Archie, in a TMNT Adventures special by heavy metal artist Milton Knight. The same Milton Knight who introduced such characters as Kid Cortex and Oxymoron. And yep, you better believe we'll be coming back to those bodacious characters in an upcoming episode as well. Milton's story, called CONEY Island Days, was actually fully illustrated, and for a brief time you could find it on his website up until his website stopped, existing. The story ultimately ended up getting canceled and never released due to the fact that Archie Comics itself got canceled. But we always thought that was an absolute shame, because despite the comic never releasing, we actually had a copy and thought it was important for folks to see what that never released tale would have looked like. So, would you look at that? All those Looney Tunes-esque pages were now just shown throughout the course of this deep dive for the very first time, at least in this fashion. We are all about adding extra layers of historical background on our favorite characters here, folks. So if you are like many Turtles fans and have never seen this before because it has never been in print, Well, now, after all these years, you have the ability to get a closer look and connect in just a little deeper. So, turtle power! In a nutshell, after an explosive encounter with the Uncanny Trio in the sewers, the now amnesiac turtles find themselves situational comedy style teamed up with a not so thinly veiled homage to the Honeymooners, here named Horton and Malfi, versus Ed Norton and Ralph Cramden, respectively, who promptly exploit their inability to remember who they are and turn them into a new Coney Island attraction called the Killer Turtles Mutilators Extraordinaire. The Uncanny Trio get wind of this, and hijinks ensue. Did this story create more questions than we had before we read it? Sure did. Do we wish it would have gone more into why the Uncanny Trio knew where the turtles lived and what their ongoing beef was with them? Where they were willing to go out of their way to track them to a park and throw a literal elephant at them? All seemingly because, well, because the plot needs to happen? Also emphatically, sure. But was it still a fun and beautiful read that we wish would have seen the light of day in comic form and we're glad exists? Hands down, yes sirree, and zoom to the moon. Okay, so how do we see these characters coming if NECA ever brought them to us in glorious toy form? We know we've never technically seen this before with two figures, but we'd love to see something similar to what we got with the Ultimate Mondo Gecko. For reference here, we're saying along the lines of where it was essentially Mondo with a smaller scale, heavily articulated Kerma. In the Uncanny Trio setting, we'd be looking at a regular-sized NOCTURNO and NEVERMORE with a smaller but still heavily articulated HALLOCAT. We'd also see them coming with lesser articulated versions of their non-mutant selves, so we could recreate the mutation process on our shelves. Some stacked crates as a callback to the Shredder's Revenge cameo, an old-timey cartoony-looking bomb, an oversized bell for which to tie Splinter up to, a cartoony-looking go-kart as a nod to the unreleased Archie comic that HALLOCAT could sit in, some additional clawed extended hands for HALLOCAT, and a cup of steaming mutagen they can be posed with to look as if they're trying to mutate unsuspecting human characters on the shelf. SpeekyGeeky's TMNT polls. Since we're already talking about wholly new characters in plastic, we figured we would take a moment to ask you, the viewer, who you would like to see in one of our upcoming videos. We've been running polls on our YouTube community page as well as our SpeekyGeeky Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit pages as to which TMNT characters from various iterations we might want to see as toys. Here are some options from our latest polls, which you can weigh in on here in the comments or head on over to any of our socials for the full list of option names to weigh in over there as well. And stay tuned because these winning options and more may very well appear in an upcoming TMNT deep dive or 2, or 10. There are also some incredibly talented TMNT customizers who are already creating some of those characters who appear on our polls, and it is a beautiful thing to see. Here are just a few of those absolutely creative folks that you are definitely going to want to keep up with, so make sure to follow them on their socials as well. If you are digging the original art shown from Cerbero, Sebastian Navas, and TMNT Saturday Morning Cartoon Adventures cover artist Mr. Jones shown throughout the character options of this very episode, be sure to show their socials listed in the description some love and check out more of their upcoming art and projects on our Instagram channel as well. Where else can you find Mr. Geeky in the coming months? Even though we are hard at work putting together a handful of geeky new deep dives and interviews together for you this very minute, never you mind how we know what time of day you are watching this buster, just trust us. If it's in an hour of a day that ends in day, we're probably working hard on it. SpeekyGeeky's very own Mr. Geeky, hey, that's me, still managing to make the rounds all over the YouTubes to spread his dorkiness far and wide. And yep, that sure did sound way grosser than we intended, didn't it? First up, over on our all-ages friendly sister channel, Geeky Jr., for all those of you who appreciate the sound of a voice that can only be described as if nails on a chalkboard met Golem from Lord of the Rings, you're in luck, because Mr. Geeky tries his best on all sorts of nostalgic classic stories with narrations and voices for all your little geeklings and adults who are young at heart. We're talking characters from Sesame Street like Ernie, Bert, Grover, Big Bird, Cookie Monster, Wonder Pets, Daniel Tiger, Thomas the Train, Yo Gabba Gabba, Rubba Dubbers, and so much more. You can also find SpeekyGeeky lending his voice to some upcoming Mirage 2003, 2012, and Rise TMNT comic read-alongs on Teddy Gaming Review's bodacious channel here, as the voice of Professor Kaori on the fan-made audio adaptation of the hit fantasy series The Fourth Wing over on the astoundingly talented Maddie Morrigan's channel here, and finally, we'll be geeking out and dishing on all the current TMNT news on Turtle Talk, as well as helping some rad figures from their plastic confinement on Grippin' and Rippin' over on Dave Wonder's channel here. All right, Shellheads, that's it for this episode, but don't stray too far from the turtle lair because our SpeekyGeeky's Archie TMNT Deep Dive Episode 7 is right around the corner. We have no doubt you have some characters that make the tippy top of your list as well that you are stoked about seeing. So make sure to make your hopes known and join the discussion in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to sub up, give the video a like, and share it with anyone you know who would appreciate these types of videos. Also, make sure to check out the description for some other links that lead to some expanded similar content we think you'll probably enjoy quite a bit. We realize you could have gone anywhere and you chose to nerd out with us, and we appreciate that. So, as always, I am Mr. Geeky, and until next we NECA Turtle Speaky, keep it geeky, folks.
Oh, it's you. What are you still doing here? Well, what are you waiting for? Get out of here already. My stories are almost starting and it left on a cliffhanger. Jessica's definitely gonna marry Brandon.